He was 25, a soldier fresh out of war, but his eyes looked 80, haunted, shut off. What miracle would unfold at this ranch? They sent him to her ranch as a last resort, but he didn't believe in therapy, didn't believe in kindness. Sarah Miller understood, a farmer's daughter who had lost everything, but still showed up, still believed that broken things could grow again. She didn't ask for his story, she just handed him a brush. This horse doesn't care about your scars, stand with her just for a minute. That minute changed everything. What could this small act lead to? Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. 6 months had passed since the convoy came rolling down Sarah Miller's dirt road. 6 months since Colonel James Carter and the Mercer Foundation had given her a second chance. Her barn now stood tall and strong, the fences no longer sagged, and every morning when the sun spilled gold across the fields, Sarah remembered what gratitude could build. But what she treasured most wasn't the barn, it was the sound of hoofbeats, steady, familiar, in the quiet presence of those who came seeking not answers, but a place to breathe. The Miller Ranch had become a modest center for equine therapy. No signs, no commercials, just 4 horses, a handful of veterans, and a quiet promise: you don't have to be okay to stand here. It was simple, it was real, and it was enough. Until the day Mike Reynolds arrived. He was 25, but his eyes, they were older than any Sarah had seen. When the Mercer rep called, they'd been cautious. Mike's recently discharged, severe PTSD. He's not open to group therapy. Thought your program might be different. Sarah had smiled gently. Send him. Now, standing by the old hitching post, Sarah watched him. Mike Reynolds was tall, but seemed smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched inward, hands jammed into jacket pockets like he was bracing for a storm. A ball cap pulled low, shadowing his face. The scars weren't visible, but Sarah knew they were there. She could feel them. She approached slowly, careful not to let the gravel crunch too loud beneath her boots. Mike? She asked. He didn't look up, didn't offer a handshake, just a curt nod, as if even that was too much. I'm Sarah Miller, she continued, voice soft. Welcome to Miller Ranch. Mike's jaw tightened, his fingers curled slightly inside his pockets. You don't have to be here long, Sarah said, keeping her tone light. I don't do speeches, don't do therapy sessions with folding chairs and clipboards. We just work with the horses, that's all. His reply was a shrug, sharp, defensive. I don't need a charity case, he muttered, not looking for pity parades or feel-good stories for your donors. Sarah smiled, but it wasn't patronizing, it was the smile of someone who had once said those exact same words. Good, she said simply, because I don't do parades either. For a moment, the silence stretched between them, not awkward, just tense, like a wire pulled too tight. Then somewhere in the paddock, a hoof struck the wooden rail, the sharp crack echoed through the air. Mike flinched visibly, a small involuntary step back, his breath hitched, not loud, but Sarah noticed. She didn't comment, didn't move toward him. She simply stood there, hands loose by her sides, giving him space. You're not broken, Mike, she said quietly. Wounded, yes, but not broken. His head snapped up then. For the first time, their eyes met, and Sarah saw that flicker of anger buried under the exhaustion. Lady, he said, voice tight, you don't know me? No. Sarah agreed, but I know what it feels like to think no one should. That silenced him. The wind stirred dust between them. The horses, sensing the weight of the moment, shifted, but remained still. Sarah took a breath, slow, measured. Listen, she said, I'm not here to fix you, I'm not even sure I can help, but there's a horse out there who doesn't care about your discharge papers, doesn't care about your scars. She only knows if you're calm, she'll be calm. Mike's gaze followed where Sarah pointed, to Whiskey, the old mare with the gentle eyes. She's been through her share of storms, too, Sarah added, doesn't trust easy, but she gives back what you give her. Mike shifted his weight, uneasy. You really think petting a horse is going to do something for me? Sarah's smile widened, but her eyes remained soft. It's not about the horse, Mike, it's about giving yourself permission to be here, even if it's just for 5 minutes. A long pause, then reluctantly, he exhaled. I'll give it one shot, he said, as if the words were pulled from him, but don't expect a miracle. Sarah's chest eased. That's fair, miracles aren't really my thing anyway. She gestured toward the paddock. I'll walk with you, no speeches, no lessons, just you, me, and Whiskey. Mike's steps were slow, cautious, but he followed. Sarah didn't press conversation. She knew the hardest battles weren't fought with words, they were fought in silence, in small, stubborn steps forward. When they reached the fence, Whiskey ambled over, her ears flicked forward, curious, but unhurried. Mike kept his hands in his pockets at first, his jaw clenched, shoulders taut. She's waiting for you to decide, Sarah said softly. Not me, not the program, you four. A moment, it seemed like he might walk away, but then, almost mechanically, Mike reached out, fingers brushed against Whiskey's muzzle, rough, hesitant, but there, the mare leaned in, breathing out a soft huff of air that stirred Mike's jacket. Sarah said nothing, she just watched, because this wasn't about her, it was about a young man carrying battles the world refused to see, offering a single fragile gesture of trust, and in that moment, it was enough. As they stood there, the late afternoon sun dipped lower. casting long shadows across the field. Sarah knew this was just the beginning, that Mike's walls wouldn't come down in a day, that tomorrow might be harder, but she also knew something else. Once upon a time, someone had offered her a seat on a plane, a small kindness that had changed the trajectory of her life. Today it was her turn to offer a quiet place to stand, no expectations, no conditions, just the space to heal, one breath, one step, one horse at a time. And as Mike Reynolds rested his hand against Whiskey's cheek, Sarah allowed herself the smallest of smiles. This was going to be a long road, but some roads were worth every mile. What would this journey reveal next? The next day, Mike Reynolds showed up early, not inside the paddock, not near the barn, but there, leaning against the outer fence, arms crossed, cap pulled low. He stood apart, as if proximity might make him vulnerable, as if walking through the gate would mean admitting he needed to. Sarah noticed him before he said a word. She didn't call out, didn't wave, she simply went about her morning routine, filling water troughs, checking the feed, brushing down Whiskey with long, steady strokes. Mike watched, quiet. Still, every so often, his gaze would flicker to Whiskey, not with affection, not yet, but with something curious. Sarah had seen it before, a weary hope buried so deep it was safer to call it suspicion. You know, she said aloud, not looking his way, this old mare almost didn't stay here. She heard the shift of gravel under his boots, a small reaction. She was skinny as a rail when she came, scar on her flank from a bad fence wire, skittish. Wouldn't let anyone near her, folks told me to cut my losses, sell her off. She wasn't worth the feed. Sarah paused, brushing gently down Whiskey's side, but she stayed, because someone told me once, value isn't measured by what's easy to fix. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Mike glance down, didn't reply, but he hadn't walked away either. That was enough for now. For the next few days, it was the same. Mike came, kept his distance, listened to the way Sarah spoke, not at him, but near him. Stories about stubborn horses, broken fences, long summers when the land fought back. She never asked about his service, never asked why his fists clenched every time a hoof struck the wooden planks. She let the silence do its work, and then on the fifth day, he crossed the fence line. No announcement, no grand gesture, just a quiet step forward until he stood beside her in the paddock. Whiskey turned her head, ears twitching. Mike hesitated. Sarah handed him the brush. She's waiting for you to decide. For a long moment, Mike didn't move, then slow, deliberate, he reached out, his fingers gripped the brush like it might shatter, but when the bristles met Whiskey's coat, something softened. The mare huffed a gentle breath, leaning into the touch. Mike's shoulders eased, barely, but enough. You know what's funny? He said, voice rough. Sarah glanced at him. I can't sleep, haven't for months. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there, different places, same feeling, like I never left. Sarah said nothing right away. She simply nodded, brushed her own section of Whiskey's side. We carry places with us, she said quietly. Some of them won't let go, but maybe the goal isn't to forget them, maybe it's to remember we're still here, even when they try to pull us back. Mike's grip on the brush tightened. I don't think I deserve to be here, he admitted, not looking at her, but the words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. Sarah leaned against the fence, folding her arms loosely. Deserves a funny word, she said. I spent a lot of years thinking the same, that I had to earn the right to be okay, but healing doesn't work on a point system. He didn't reply, but he listened. You know what we do here, Mike? She continued to voice steady. We don't fix what's broken, we learn how to live with it, how to keep moving without letting the sharp edges cut us every time. The wind stirred between them, not cold, not harsh, just enough to make the dust dance. Mike gave a short breath, not quite a laugh, but not far from one either. That's when the pickup rolled into the drive. Sarah recognized the shape of it immediately. Colonel Carter. He climbed out slow, careful, his limp more pronounced today, but his back was straight, his gaze sharp. Mike watched him approach, eyes narrowing slightly, instinctively assessing. Good afternoon, Sarah. Carter greeted, voice warm but firm. Afternoon, Colonel. She smiled. Didn't expect you today, wanted to check on an old friend, he said, giving Whiskey a fond pat. Then his eyes turned to Mike, and meet a new one. Mike straightened, subtly defensive, but Carter's presence wasn't intrusive. It was solid, grounded. He didn't ask Mike's rank, didn't inquire about deployments, he simply extended a weathered hand. Mike hesitated, then shook it, firm, brief. Carter's grip was steady, but what struck Sarah was the look in his eyes, not appraisal, not pity, recognition. After a moment, Carter rested a hand lightly on Mike's shoulder. Whiskey didn't ask me if I was worth the trouble, he said, a tone calm. She just waited until I was ready. The words hung there, simple, unadorned, but they landed with the weight of shared understanding. Mike didn't reply, but Sarah saw it, the shift, small, but real. Carter didn't linger. He gave Whiskey a final pat, tipped his cap, and left with the same quiet dignity he always carried. When the dust settled, Mike remained by the paddock longer than he had before. Sarah didn't push, she simply continued brushing Whiskey, content in the steady rhythm, and beside her, Mike picked up the brush again, not because he was asked, but because maybe for the first time he wanted to. What transformation would unfold next? That evening, as the sun dipped low, Sarah stood by the barn watching Mike help stack fresh hay. His movements were still guarded, but his eyes, they didn't look so far away now. She knew this was only the beginning, the real work was ahead, but the first seed had taken root, quiet, unassuming, but alive, and sometimes that was all it took. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of afternoon where the air hangs thick, not with heat, but with a tension you can't explain. Sarah was in the barn tossing fresh hay into the stalls. Mike was outside clearing debris near the old corral. He'd been helping more lately, quietly, steadily, and then it hit a sharp splintering crack, wood snapping, a thunderous slam as one of the fence posts collapsed, hitting the ground like a gunshot. Someone had mishandled the bracing beam, an accident, a simple ball, careless mistake, but for Mike Reynolds, it was a detonation. He dropped the rake instantly, flinched hard, and for a moment, he wasn't on Miller Ranch anymore. His breath hitched. Chest rising too fast, fingers curling into fists. Sarah's heart seized. She recognized the signs, the white-knuckled grip, the dilation of his pupils, the way his body coiled in on itself, like the world was closing in. Mike, she called gently, but he didn't hear her. His world had already shifted in a flash. Mike's composure shattered. Get down, he roared, but no one was firing, no one was aiming, no one was there. His fist slammed into the barn post, once or twice, a brutal reflexive assault on a ghost only. He could see it. Stop. Stop it. He growled, not at Sarah, but at the memory clawing at his throat. The post splintered under his knuckles, blood streaking across the grain. His breathing was ragged, raw. Sarah's instinct screamed at her to intervene, but she didn't, not yet. She stayed rooted, hands loose by her sides, grounded, because she knew this wasn't a moment to fix. This was a battle Mike had to face, so she stood still as steady, a lighthouse against the storm. Minutes stretched. The only sounds were his gasping breaths and the ragged scrape of boots against dirt. Finally, slowly, Mike's fists unclenched, his arms dropped, his shoulders slumped as if the weight of every buried year had just come crashing back down. He looked up, and for the first time, Sarah saw it fully, not anger, not defiance, shame. See, he spat, thick with self-loathing. I told you I'm just broken, you're wasting your time, Sarah. The words echoed, sharp and cruel, but Sarah had heard them before. Different voice, same battle. She stepped forward, slow but deliberate. You think you're the first one to break here? She said softly. Mike's jaw clenched, but he didn't walk away. Sarah pointed to the fence line. To this day, I can show you the exact spot where I sat with the last bill from the bank, holding it like a death notice, telling myself it was over, that I'd lost. Her voice didn't rise, it didn't need to, but someone didn't let me stay there. Someone believed in me when I didn't think I deserved it. She took another step closer, close enough now for Mike to feel the weight of her words. You were not the first man to go 12 rounds with himself, Mike, and you won't be the last. Mike's fists curled again, but it wasn't anger this time, it was holding on, to fight your own mind every day. Sarah continued, takes more strength than anyone sees, but you're here, still standing. That's not failure, that's grit. For a moment, the barn seemed to hold its breath. Mike's gaze dropped to his bloody knuckles, then almost reluctantly to Whiskey, who had wandered over. Curious but calm, the mare stood there waiting, no judgment, no expectation, just presence. Mike exhaled a shudder of breath, like something cracking inside. He said, let me take her in, he said suddenly, not a plea, not a question, a choice. Sarah's chest tightened, not with pity, but with fierce, quiet pride. She nodded once. Mike approached Whiskey slowly, not stiff like before, not guarded. He reached for the lead rope, his fingers trembling slightly, but steadying as they closed around it. The mare didn't flinch, neither did he. Together, they moved step by step toward the barn as Sarah followed at a distance, not intruding on the gravity of the moment. Mike didn't speak as he guided Whiskey into her stall, but his hands were different now, not just holding, anchoring. When he turned, Sarah caught it. The way his posture was no longer defensive, the way his shoulders, though still heavy, weren't caving in. It wasn't triumph, it was reclaiming space. Sarah didn't smile wide, didn't clap him on the back, she just said quietly, today you let someone walk into your battlefield, Mike, even if it was just a horse. Mike's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile, quickly buried, but it was there. I want to keep going, he said, voice low but firm. This program, this place, I want to finish what I started. Sarah nodded, her throat tight, because she knew the victory wasn't in the calm days, it wasn't in the photo ops or the graduation ceremonies, it was right here in the choice to stay, in the refusal to run. That night, as the last light faded behind the ridge, Mike helped secure the barn doors. No instructions, no prompting, he moved with the quiet assurance of a man who, for the first time in a long while, wasn't fighting alone. Sarah stood by the porch watching him. The past would still come for him, the memories, the sounds, the shadows, but today he had chosen not to retreat, and sometimes that was the bravest thing a person could do. The day settled into a quiet rhythm, morning chores, dust on boots, the soft murmur of veterans brushing horses, learning slowly to breathe easier, and there was Mike, no longer a stranger pressed against the fence. No longer the man who flinched at every crack of wood. He moved among them now, not Loud, not in charge, but present, he swept out stalls, repaired tack with methodical patience, and when new veterans arrived, shoulders tense, eyes wary, Mike noticed, just like Sarah had noticed him, one afternoon, an older man stepped out of the Mercer transport van. His gait was stiff, hands shoved deep into his jacket, face lined, but his eyes told the story. Sarah saw it instantly, but before she could approach, Mike was already moving straight toward him. "Sir," Mike said, his tone quiet, but sure. "Name's Mike, you don't know me, that's okay, but I know what it's like standing right where you were." The man said nothing. Mike gestured toward the paddock, toward Whiskey. "She's got a scar, same as you, same as me, doesn't matter to her. All she asks is you stand by her side just for a minute, no words, no explanations." The man hesitated, but Mike waited, not pushing, not filling the silence, and slowly, step by step, the veteran moved toward the mare. Whiskey turned her head. Ears flicked forward, she closed the distance between them without fanfare. The man's hand trembled as it reached out, but Whiskey met him halfway. Sarah stood by the barn watching, a familiar ache blooming in her chest that had been Mike not so long ago, and now he was the one offering steadiness. The circle had closed. Later that evening, as the sky blushed with the colors of a fading sun, Sarah found Mike by the hitching post. "You did good today," she said. He shrugged, but couldn't quite hide the flicker of something warmer. "I just told him what you told me," Mike said. Sarah smiled. "That's how it works." A few days later, a black SUV crunched up the gravel drive. Mercer Foundation's crest gleamed on the door. James Mercer himself stepped out. They sat on the porch, the three of them, Sarah, Mike, and Mercer, whose presence was as unassuming as it was deliberate. "We've been watching the progress here," Mercer said. "You've built more than a therapy program, Sarah. You've built a place where people stand tall again." He turned to Mike. "We'd like to expand, bring in more veterans, more horses, but we can't do it without someone who understands the ground level work." Mike listened, quiet, measured. "We want you as a co-lead trainer," Mercer continued, "not a figurehead, not a face for media, but the man who walks with them, step for step." Mike's response was simple: "I'll do the work, but keep the cameras out of it." Mercer smiled. "Done is Sarah." And just like that, Mike's role changed, not overnight, not with a ceremony, but with steady, purposeful presence. He wasn't here for headlines, he was here for the man who couldn't breathe, for the woman who hadn't spoken in months, for every veteran who stepped off that van feeling like a ghost. Weeks passed. The program grew. On a cool spring morning, Sarah watched as Mike hammered the last nail into a new wooden sign by the main gate. The letters were carved by hand, rough, imperfect, but perfect all the same: Miller Ranch, a place to stand again. Mike stepped back, wiping his brow. "It's not fancy," he said. Sarah's throat tightened. "It's exactly right." She didn't need to say more, because standing there beneath that simple sign was a man who had once believed he wasn't worth the space he took up, and now he was helping others claim that space for themselves. In the quiet that followed, Sarah felt it, settled deep in her bones. Kindness wasn't a grand gesture, it wasn't a medal, it wasn't a headline, it was in the steady hands that mended fences, in the quiet nods exchanged across the paddock, in the simple act of showing up day after day. There had been a time when Sarah Miller believed she was holding on to the farm for her parents' sake, for legacy, for memory, but now she understood this place wasn't about preserving the past, it was about giving people, broken, weary, still fighting, a place to plant their feet again. And as Mike stood beside it, arms crossed, watching Whiskey graze contentedly in the afternoon light, Sarah knew the story wasn't over, not hers, not his, it was a story passed from hand to hand. From one quiet act of grace to the next, no fanfare, no parades, just the steady, relentless kindness of people who understood what it meant to be seen, to be lifted, to be given a place to stand. And in the stillness of that moment, Sarah smiled, because she knew without question that was enough, that was everything. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today someone isn't going hungry, and sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.